There comes a moment in every believer's life when the path ahead seems uncertain, when dreams appear too distant and promises feel too far away. It is in those moments that we must remember a timeless truth. Faith sees beyond the visible. Faith is not about what you can touch or see. It is about what you can trust. It reaches beyond the boundaries of the natural and grasps hold of the supernatural. It looks past the mountain and sees the victory waiting on the other side. When God calls you to something great, He will often lead you through seasons where your sight fails because He wants to teach you to rely not on your eyes, but on His Word. So many of us live imprisoned by what we can see. We say, "I'll believe it when I see it," but heaven operates differently. God says, "You'll see it when you believe it." That's the essence of faith. It is believing before the evidence appears, trusting before the miracle happens, and moving before the doors open. Every great person of faith has stood in that place of unseen hope. Noah built an ark before rain ever fell. Abraham walked toward a land he had never seen. Moses stood before the Red Sea with no bridge, no boat, only a staff and a promise. David faced a giant with a slingshot and a heart full of faith. Each one dared to believe that the invisible hand of God was stronger than the visible obstacles before them. Maybe today you're standing before your own Red Sea, a problem that feels too big, a dream that seems too far, a prayer that's gone unanswered. You've tried everything you know, and still the situation hasn't changed. But listen carefully, what you see is not all there is. Behind what looks impossible, God is already at work. Faith is the bridge between what is and what will be. You see, fear looks at the waves. Faith looks at the Savior walking on them. Fear says, "It's too late." Faith says, "It's never too late with God." Fear sees the storm. Faith sees the rainbow that follows. Faith refuses to be intimidated by what the eyes see because it knows what the heart believes. Sometimes God will intentionally hide the outcome so you can learn to walk by trust. He doesn't reveal every detail because if you saw everything, you wouldn't need faith. Faith is what connects you to the power and purpose of God. It's what turns ordinary lives into extraordinary testimonies. Faith doesn't deny reality, it defies it. It says, "Yes, this diagnosis is real, but so is my healer." It says, "Yes, the struggle is hard, but my God is stronger." Faith sees the invisible hand moving when everything looks still. It hears the voice of hope whispering when silence fills the room. It holds on when everything in you wants to let go. There are moments when you will have to believe before you feel anything. You'll have to praise before the answer comes. Pray when you feel empty, and stand when everything around you tells you to sit down. That's faith. It is not emotional, it is spiritual. It's not about what feels right, it's about what you know is right, because God said it. When faith becomes your vision, you stop measuring life by what's visible. You begin to live with a deeper confidence, a calm assurance that even if you don't see the whole picture, God is painting something beautiful behind the scenes. You start walking with peace even in storms because you know the one who calms the waves. There's a reason the scripture says, "We walk by faith, not by sight." Sight will mislead you. Sight will tell you that you're defeated when faith says you're more than a conqueror. Sight will say the door is closed, but faith reminds you that God can open what no man can shut. Sight focuses on the grave, but faith sees the resurrection. When you live by faith, you stop being limited by what you lack. You stop saying, "I can't," and start saying, "With God, I can." Faith doesn't need a perfect plan, it just needs a willing heart. It takes one small step of belief for God to move in ways that leave you amazed. The enemy will always attack your vision. He wants you to focus on your limits, your failures, and your disappointments. But faith lifts your eyes higher. It reminds you that mountains are only temporary and that God specializes in turning impossible situations into miracles. Perhaps you've been waiting a long time for something to change. You've prayed, you've believed, and yet the answer hasn't come. Remember this: God's delays are not His denials. Sometimes he allows a season of silence so that your faith can grow roots deep enough to withstand the storm. The tree that stands tall is the one that was forced to push its roots deeper during the drought. Faith doesn't mean everything will happen quickly. It means you trust God's timing even when you don't understand it. When you believe that He is faithful, you stop panicking in the waiting. You learn that every delay carries a purpose to prepare you for the promise. There will be days when faith feels hard, days when you'll cry and wonder if God still hears you. But in those moments, remember that even a mustard seed of faith can move mountains. It's not the size of your faith that matters, it's the size of your God. Sometimes the greatest faith is not shouting with confidence, but whispering through tears, "Lord, I still believe." That quiet faith moves heaven. That unshakable trust catches the attention of God. He honors those who refuse to give up even when everything looks lost. When you choose faith over fear, something shifts within you. You stop reacting to circumstances and start responding to promises. You stop waiting for everything to make sense and start believing that everything will make purpose. You begin to see through God's eyes, not focusing on what's missing, but on what's possible. There's a story of a young boy who stood before a massive mountain, holding a small shovel. Someone asked, "Do you really think you can move that mountain?" He smiled and said, "No, but I know if I keep digging and keep praying, God will move it for me." That is faith, not giving up when the task looks too big, but trusting that God is bigger still. Faith has a language of its own. It speaks in declarations like, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." It whispers, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." It sings in the night and rejoices in the dark because it knows the light is coming. You may not see the full path ahead, but faith doesn't need to see the whole staircase, it just takes the first step. One obedient step can open doors that years of waiting could not. One act of belief can set in motion miracles you never imagined. God is not asking you to understand everything. He is asking you to trust Him in everything. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to believe that He already has. When you begin to live with faith as your sight, fear loses its power. You'll find courage to start again after failure, strength to forgive after betrayal, and peace to keep going even when the road is long. Faith transforms the way you see life. It gives you heaven's perspective in an earthly world. And one day, you'll look back and realize that what once looked impossible was actually the path that led you closer to God. The pain, the waiting, the tears, they weren't wasted. They were shaping your faith, refining your vision, and preparing you for something greater. So today, lift your eyes above what you see. Stop staring at the walls of limitation and start looking toward the horizon of possibility. Don't let your current situation define your eternal destination. What you see now is temporary. What God is building is eternal. Faith sees the invisible, believes the incredible, and receives the impossible. It's not bound by the limits of human logic or the constraints of fear. It's fueled by the promises of a faithful God who has never failed and never will. So keep believing even when you don't see the outcome. Keep trusting even when the way is unclear. Keep walking even when the road feels long. Because the same God who parted the sea, who raised the dead, who shut the mouths of lions, is the same God walking beside you today. And one day, when the vision becomes reality, when the promise is fulfilled, and when the miracle arrives, you'll look back and say, "Now I see why I had to walk by faith. Now I understand that faith really does see beyond the visible." For those who dare to believe, no mountain is too high, no dream too big, and no future too far. Faith always finds a way because it sees what the eyes cannot, and trusts what the heart knows is true. My friends, there comes a time in life when every person stands face to faced with their own limitations. We look at the mountain ahead and feel too small to climb it. We see the dream within us, but it feels too distant, too impossible, too beyond our reach. We think of our weaknesses, our failures, and the mistakes that haunt us, and we begin to believe that maybe we just aren't enough. But let me tell you something today: God's purpose exceeds your limitations. You were never meant to walk through life measuring yourself by human standards. You were created for something divine, something far greater than what your natural mind can comprehend. God did not design you for mediocrity or fear. He designed you to reflect His glory, to walk in faith, and to trust that what He began in you, He is able to complete. When we look at the stories written throughout Scripture, we see a consistent pattern: God choosing ordinary, limited people to accomplish extraordinary things. It's as if He delights in using the least expected person to display His greatest glory. Why? Because when He works through weakness, no one can boast. The world will know that it wasn't man's ability, but God's power that made it possible. Think of Moses. He was a man who stuttered, unsure of himself, convinced that he wasn't the right person for the task. Yet God called him to stand before Pharaoh, the most powerful ruler of his time, and demand freedom for his people. Moses felt unworthy and inadequate, but God said, "I will be with you." That's the difference, my friend. Your limitation might be real, but when God's presence fills that gap, the impossible becomes possible. Think of Gideon, hiding in fear, convinced he was the least in his family from the weakest clan. Yet God called him a mighty man of valor. Gideon couldn't see it, but God did. God doesn't see you as you are, He sees you as you can become when His power works through you. That's why His purpose always stretches beyond what you think you can handle. And what about David, a shepherd boy, overlooked and underestimated? While others saw just a boy with a sling, God saw a king with a calling. David's brothers saw limitations. God saw potential. And when David faced Goliath, it wasn't his strength that won, it was his faith. He knew that the battle belonged to God, and that's why he triumphed. You see, every limitation becomes a platform for God's greatness to be revealed. When you think you've run out of options, that's when His power begins to move. When you feel weak, He shows Himself strong. When you are at your lowest, He lifts you higher than you thought you could go. Maybe you feel today like you've failed too many times. You might say, "God can't use me after what I've done." But remember Peter, he denied the very one He promised to die for. Yet God restored him, filled him with His Spirit, and used him to preach a sermon that brought thousands to salvation. Your failure is not final when God's grace is involved. Sometimes we think our limitation is our enemy, but in truth, it's often the tool God uses to keep us dependent on Him. If you had all the strength, all the wisdom, all the resources you needed, you wouldn't need faith. But God allows certain weaknesses to remain so that His power can rest upon you. The Apostle Paul understood this when he said, "I will boast in my weakness, for when I am weak, then I am strong." That sounds contradictory to the world, but in God's kingdom, it makes perfect sense. The weaker you are in your own ability, the more room there is for God's strength to operate. My friend, never underestimate what God can do through a life that is fully surrendered. He is not limited by your past, your education, your status, or your resources. He is only limited by your willingness to believe. When you trust Him completely, you remove the boundaries of what is humanly possible. Perhaps you've prayed for something for a long time: a healing, a breakthrough, a restored relationship, a new opportunity, and it seems like nothing is happening. Don't give up. God is never late. He is preparing you in the waiting. Sometimes the delay is not punishment, but preparation. He is molding your character, teaching you patience, and deepening your faith so that when the blessing arrives, you're ready to handle it. There are moments in life when God will lead you into places that don't make sense. He may ask you to take a step that seems too risky, to dream beyond what feels realistic, or to let go of something comfortable so he can bring you into something greater. That's the point where faith is tested. But remember, if God called you to it, he will carry you through it. Don't let fear dictate your decisions. Fear magnifies your limits. Faith magnifies God's power. Fear says, "What if I fail?" Faith says, "Even if I fail, God will lift me up again." Fear focuses on what you don't have. Faith focuses on what God can provide. Fear looks at the storm. Faith keeps its eyes on the one who calms it. When God gives you a vision, it will always be bigger than your ability. That's how you know it's from Him. It will require you to trust, to stretch, and to step beyond your comfort zone. The vision might seem impossible now, but remember, God specializes in impossibilities. He took a barren womb and brought forth nations. He took a cross, an instrument of death, and turned it into a symbol of eternal life. If He can do that, what can He not do in your life? Sometimes the greatest miracle is not that God changes your situation, but that He changes you in the process. He gives you the courage to face what you once feared, the endurance to keep walking when you want to give up, and the faith to keep believing when all hope seems gone. Every struggle you face has a divine purpose. The things you call limitations might be the very things God is using to shape your destiny. He may allow pain to teach you compassion, loss to teach you gratitude, or failure to teach you humility. When you look back one day, you'll see that every step, even the difficult ones, was part of a greater plan. So if you feel weak today, take heart. God does not need perfection. He needs surrender. He does not ask for strength. He asks for faith. You may not have all the answers, but you have the one who is the answer, and that's enough. The world says, "Prove yourself." God says, "Trust me." The world measures success by numbers, titles, and recognition. God measures it by obedience. You might never stand on a stage, but if you stand firm in faith, heaven will take notice. You might not have the applause of men, but you'll have the approval of God. When you finally understand that God's purpose exceeds your limitations, you stop trying to control everything and start resting in His promise. You stop saying, "I can't," and start saying, "He can." You stop focusing on your weakness and start focusing on His strength. My friend, the God who created the universe has written your story with His own hands. He knows the beginning, the middle, and the end. What seems like a detour to you is still part of His divine route. What feels like an ending might actually be the beginning of something greater. So lift your head today. Don't let the weight of your past or the size of your problem make you forget the power of your God. He is not finished with you yet. The same hands that formed the stars are shaping your future. The same voice that calmed the sea still speaks peace over your storm. Keep trusting when you can't see. Keep believing when you don't understand. Keep walking even when the path is dark. Because one day the light will break through, and you'll realize that every step, every tear, every prayer, every moment of waiting was leading you towards something far greater than you could have imagined. God's purpose for your life is not hindered by what you lack. It is empowered by who He is. You may feel limited, but He is limitless. You may feel weak, but He is mighty. You may not see the way, but He already knows it. So today, let your faith rise above your fear. Let your trust in God silence the voice of doubt. Surrender your limits into the hands of the one who has none, because when you do, you'll discover that what you thought was impossible was simply the starting point for a miracle. Yes, my friend, God's purpose truly exceeds your limitations. And when you put your life in His hands, He will take your broken pieces and build something beautiful, something eternal, something beyond all that you could ever ask or imagine. Every vision born of faith will face opposition. Every dream inspired by God will be tested in the fire of delay, doubt, and disappointment. That's not a sign that your vision is wrong. It's often proof that it's right. Because When God gives you a vision that stretches beyond human understanding, the enemy will do everything in his power to make you give up before it comes to pass. But here, this truth vision requires trust through opposition. When you begin to walk in obedience to what God has shown you, it won't always make sense to others. People may question your motives, challenge your faith, or mock your dream. Circumstances might contradict what you believe. Doors may close that you thought would open easily, and in those moments you'll be tempted to think that maybe you heard wrong, maybe the vision was just your imagination, or maybe you're not strong enough to carry it. But that's exactly where faith begins to grow. Faith doesn't flourish in comfort, it flourishes in conflict. It's when the winds of opposition blow hardest that your roots of trust grow deepest. Think about it, every great story of faith in the Bible was marked by opposition. Noah built an ark when no one had ever seen rain. People laughed, called him foolish, but he kept building because he trusted God more than he feared man. Joseph dreamed of greatness, but found himself betrayed, sold into slavery, and thrown into prison. Yet through every trial, he held on to the vision, trusting that what God had shown him was still true, even when life made no sense. And look at David, anointed to be king, but spending years hiding in caves while running from Saul. It didn't look like the promise was anywhere near fulfillment, but he never stopped trusting God's timing. The opposition didn't cancel the vision, it confirmed it. The truth is, opposition doesn't mean you're failing, it often means you're getting closer. The enemy never attacks what isn't a threat. The storm doesn't rage over an empty sea, it rages over a ship carrying purpose. When God places a vision in your heart, it's bigger than your ability, greater than your understanding, and stronger than your fear. But it will require endurance. It will require the courage to keep believing even when you can't see how. Trust is the bridge between the vision and its fulfillment. It's the quiet confidence that says, I don't see it yet, but I know God is working. It's standing firm when you feel weak. It's choosing faith when you feel forgotten. It's praising through the pain and waiting with hope, knowing that every delay has a divine design. Sometimes opposition is not meant to stop you, but to shape you. God allows certain storms not to destroy your vision, but to strengthen your character, because the size of your vision requires the strength of your faith. If the dream is big, your roots must go deep. The process may be painful, but it's never pointless. Each setback is shaping your spiritual muscles for the destiny ahead. Joseph wouldn't have been ready to rule Egypt without the lessons learned in the pit and the prison. Moses wouldn't have led Israel without the wilderness. And you won't step into your full calling without learning to trust God through the trials that come your way. When the vision seems impossible, that's when trust becomes essential. Because the vision is never about what you can do, it's about what God can do through you. When you reach the end of your strength, that's when His power begins. You may feel like you've waited too long. Maybe the promise seems forgotten, maybe the dream looks dead, but faith declares, even now, God is able. Even now, He can resurrect what seems finished. Even now, He can open doors that no man can shut. Even now, He can turn every setback into a setup for something greater. Trust through opposition means holding on when nothing makes sense. It's refusing to let go of the hand of God, even when you don't understand His plan. It's saying, Lord, I don't see the way, but I trust you anyway. When Peter stepped out of the boat, he didn't wait for calm waters, he trusted God in the middle of the storm. When Daniel faced the lion's den, he didn't plead for escape, he trusted God in the presence of danger. When Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown into the fiery furnace, they said, even if He does not deliver us, we will not bow. That's trust. That's faith that stands firm through opposition. Maybe you're facing your own furnace right now, rejection, financial struggle, sickness, or loss. You feel surrounded by the heat of disappointment. But just as God was with those 3 men in the fire, He is with you. He will not let the fire consume you. He will use it to refine you. The enemy's greatest weapon is discouragement. He knows he cannot destroy your destiny, so he tries to make you quit before you reach it. But don't give him that satisfaction. Keep moving, even if it's just one small step at a time. Every step of obedience is a declaration of trust. Every time you keep going, you are saying, God, I still believe you. You may not see the progress right now, but trust me, growth is happening underground. Seeds don't sprout overnight. They break in darkness before they bloom in light. Your waiting season is not wasted. It's preparing you for your winning season. There will come a day when you'll look back and thank God for every obstacle, every delay, every heartbreak, because you'll realize that what looked like opposition was actually divine preparation. God was aligning the right people, the right timing, and the right opportunity, all while strengthening your heart to carry the blessing. The waiting room of faith can be the hardest place to stand. It tests your patience, your perseverance, and your perspective. But remember, this delay is not denial. God never forgets a promise. His timing is perfect because His wisdom is infinite. So when doors close, don't despair. When people walk away, don't chase them. When the plan changes, don't panic. The one who gave you the vision hasn't changed his mind about you. Trust him even when the road twists and turns. He knows where it leads. Opposition may slow you down, but it cannot stop what God has ordained. Mountains may rise, but they will move in His name. Storms may rage, but they will pass. The same God who called you will carry you. And when the vision finally unfolds, when what you prayed for becomes reality, you'll see that it was never your power that made it happen. It was your trust. It was your willingness to stand in faith when everything in you wanted to quit. It was your choice to believe that God is faithful, even when life is not fair. Trust through opposition is not passive waiting, it's active faith. It's continuing to serve, to pray, to work, and to praise in the middle of uncertainty. It's looking beyond the pain and seeing purpose. It's knowing that every tear you've cried, every prayer you've whispered, and every step you've taken in faith is leading you closer to the promise. You don't have to understand how it will all work out. You just have to believe that it will. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who shut the mouths of lions, who raised the dead, He is still the same today. He can make a way where there is no way. So keep your heart steady. Keep your faith strong. The road of vision may be hard, but it leads to glory. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. You are being shaped for something greater than you can imagine. When the vision feels distant, remember you're not walking alone. The hand that began this good work in you is still holding you, and He has promised to complete it. So stand tall, even in the storm. Praise through the pain. Hold on through the hardship, because one day soon the vision will speak. It will not delay. It will not fail. It will come to pass exactly as God intended, and when it does, every trial you endured will make sense. Every tear will testify. Every scar will tell the story of grace. You will look back and realize that it wasn't the easy days that built your faith, it was the hard ones. It wasn't the victories that defined your trust, it was the battles. And it wasn't the vision itself that made you strong, it was learning to trust through the opposition. So keep believing, keep trusting, keep walking, because the vision still lives, and the God who gave it is still faithful.